Hey, Franco,
Hello, Todd. How are you?
what's happening?
Lots going on.
Isn't it? Isn't it?
Yes.
Let me plug into Facebook real quick.
Yes. Let me just switch screens here
Let's see here.
so I get on the correct screen.
Yeah, let me just share this to the other two pages. Page. Yeah, there is a lot going on. I figured you would have something to say about it.
Well, we'll see.
uh,
See what you want to play with.
as long as we're playing, I don't care what we do.
I like that.
Yeah, we've had a couple of really good shows today. It's a powerful day yesterday too. And I know people associate it with what is it, the day at a time and first day of the Galactic New Year, whatever, but it doesn't even matter. Just these last 2 days have been very incredible, very powerful. Hello, everybody. Let me just say a quick hi. Thank you for your continued love and support, contributions. Keep us going. And if these shows resonate with you, please share and also consider supporting us with a contribution so we can keep going. That's just Todd freaking out a little bit with the end of the month coming. But no, we do appreciate everybody. We appreciate you being a part of this. We're all a part of it. And we've had a couple of great shows today. We got Franco back, and I know it's going to be a great show. You said, Franco, a lot's going on the last, what, month?
Yeah, it is. I mean, both months of June and July are pretty heavy, but I noticed that in July things are ramping up even further. We've had a couple of big changes that have occurred that is to assist humanity to move forward. And one of them was around the 12th of July, which was at that point in time, some of the inverted matrix was actually disabled. So at that point in time, about 30% of the transmission from the inverted matrix was actually disabled. And that was to allow people, to give them the opportunity to be able to manage without having a steady stream of instructions and activations of staying in an ego-controlled mind, because in essence, the ego itself is artificial intelligence that is directly designed as the software that we have within ourselves to navigate the inverted matrix and 2D. So the inverted 3D basically and the 2D. So part of that was turned down. But after the 21st, around the 22nd, I don't know if you felt anything, but at that point in time, another 10% was actually disabled. So we have about 40% of the inverted matrix transmission to all the egos on the planet, which is basically all of us with that operating system, are getting less. So 40% less transmission, reinforcement, and also of a streaming that's going through. So that occurred just recently, since the 12th till now.
Wow.
The other thing is some of the energies that have been transmitted from the sun. I don't know if anybody's noticed it, but not the sun, the moon itself is basically had been shielded to some degree to actually, it's like a filter going through. And so that it doesn't reinforce the inverted matrix, because the moon actually has transmitters and so forth that actually support that part of it. So all of this has been to facilitate us to be able to start to more self-navigate, even though we may be running a lot of people, most of the people actually are still running in from that automatic programming and so forth, but at least it's not the same intensities. So that's the first part. The second part of it that came in, that we've also been having a lot of strong energies that actually are disrupting our patterns. Okay, but it's also very powerful too, because it also brings up certain emotion programs and so forth to the surface a lot quicker. But it not only is it quicker, it comes in quicker and it dissipates very quickly, and it also allows us to move a lot more freely. So it can feel so chaotic at times, and sometimes it feels blissful. There's a lot of that going on. And I've noticed that people, have been panicking in a sense because stuff is going on. And then all of a sudden, a day or two later, there goes, oh, okay, now I have another level of clarity. I'm much more calmer with it and so forth. That's not with everybody, but a lot of the people that would get impacted by that have been feeling those waves. There's a lot going on. That we have another input coming in around the 31st of July. So we're actually, one of the people that are going to be at the retreat actually calls it the Black Moon. We're actually doing a sound bowl meditation and a bit of a talk which we're going to be transmitting, just to kind of bring in the energies that are coming through and actually transmute it, so that we actually can utilize it in a more beneficial way rather than stimulating what we already have as our own operating system, which has been all conditioned and programmed for us completely.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on in that respect. I know that there's been a few upgrades that have occurred that has come through with the beings that I work with. I don't know if you want to go into that or not.
Yeah. But let me stop you first and go back.
Yeah.
I definitely want to go into that. Let's go into that next. You said something about, all right, three things. One, I guess the 40% that's been removed, is that permanent? Will it continue to decrease, or I guess the removal increase from this point on, or do you see it going back and forth?
Well, what I've been informed and from what I've seen is that it's to be permanent, and I think it was by the end of August, it'd be 50%, and then by the end of November going into December, it should be 100%. So I don't know how many more stages, because they weren't very clear with that. But in essence, no, it's not to return. It was disabled in a way where it can't be reactivated.
Right.
This is all purposeful to get people moving, because what happens right now, we're having a lot of kickback, right? And what I say about kickback is that every time we're making a progress step forward in things, we feel that, there's almost like a download of energies and downloads of codes and downloads of programs, which actually bring us back to the old state of seeing, which creates fear, creates, reactions of feeling unstable and things of that nature, so that we actually go back to a comfort zone, which is really uncomfortable, but going to a comfort zone, which is our old patterns. So to prevent all of that, it has now been, they said that basically to give us a boost at this point in time, to be able to have that to be shut down. I was actually surprised for the next 10%, because when the 12 came along, the 30% was already pretty huge.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you felt it or not, but a lot of people have, and I noticed it myself. It actually felt the day that I remember waking up on the 13th, and I'm going, okay, this feels really different here today. And it felt like you were almost in a different timeline, because everything started to look quite different around you, right? Because that projection, because you have to understand, we are holographic projections, and whatever we're projecting, it is merged with the projection that the inverted matrix does. Now, removing 30% of the slide film, or whatever you want to call it, the input, then you are more in charge, or have a little bit more hand at creating a reality. So it felt quite huge and a difference. When the other 10% came in, it actually didn't feel as big, but it felt even more freeing. So it's been feeling lighter in a way, and it also feels less discouraging and more hopeful, if you want to call it that, using those terminologies. And in essence, I've noticed with people saying, well, now I feel that there's actually more movement, and the movement is not going to go up and down, because that's kind of what we've been experiencing it. Now, the only thing I have to say, Todd, the up and down that you're going to experience is not because we're being affected harder, or that it's actually taking steps back. It's us. It's really what's being triggered within us, which is the old aspect of ourselves that are coming up and can trigger us emotionally. But when it does that emotionally, it shifts our frequency. And just imagine this, that we have various groups of what we call collective energies and consciousness. So depending on if we get triggered enough, we actually go to a different cluster, or what we can call a group of collective energies and collective states of mind, so that you may feel that all of a sudden, because your reality around you will shift also. To some degree. So you feel like, oh my God, I'm actually stepped back. But no, you're actually going into a deeper immersion of that, so that you can actually see it more clearly and then be able to create that shift.
Yeah,
So that's the only up and down you're going to feel, really.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so would it be, I mean, it doesn't sound like at least the 10% and maybe even the 30% doesn't sound like those were planned, pre-planned, or designated a long time ago. It sounds like, at least with the 10%, that that was a a fairly recent call, or spontaneous call. I would assume, is that true? A, and B, is that based on our progress or lack of progress?
Well, yes, you're right about it, because normally I get information ahead of time, quite a way ahead. What are some of the things? And I know the matrix was to be removed by the end of the year anyways. That is known. But the surprise was the fact that they actually decided to, and they made it very clear, decided, okay, we're going to do this, and we're going to remove part of that to allow people to start to be able to move more freely within their own state, because we have been making progress. I have to say, we have been making progress. However, what has been going on is that we've been feeling something actually pushing us back a lot of times, even though we wanted to move forward. Mm-hmm. So to reduce that kickback, which I call a kickback, to reduce that kickback, because what happens is the inverted matrix is very well designed, in a sense, is if you start moving forward, it will actually stimulate for you to kind of feel that you're being blocked or something push you back in a way. So a lot of times what happens is, even when people are going through a process of becoming more aware, or some people call awakening more, then what happens is that the inverted matrix is designed so that if you're doing that, it actually kicks back at you. So in essence, it actually stimulates your ego mind even more, so that you go into a judgment state rather than an opening state. So you're basically saying, okay, now I realize that. Now you go around comparing everybody, judging everybody, and so forth. But that's the kickback. That's that program that kicks in. So a lot of that has been happening, and a lot of other things have been happening. So when they introduced that, I was actually quite impressed that they did that, and they did it at this point. Now, they made it very clear, because of the fact of a lot of the staging that's happening, that's been happening for June and July. And so in essence, to make it easier and not to get people hung up, because it's easy to do so, especially when, things start moving and then you start feeling stuff that's even more intense coming your way, you get discouraged. And that was one of the things that was a really big program that actually has been part of it that has been tuned down considerably, because a lot of people have been feeling discouragement because of, they're seeing progress, but they're not seeing progress. They are seeing progress, but they're not experiencing as much. They feel the upwards and then the downwards. So it's been, quite a roller coaster ride, in a sense.
Wow. And so you were going to get into, so you asked me a minute ago, you want me to get into that. Was that the same thing you were talking about?
Similar to, but in essence, some of the things that have been clarified in regards to some of the things that are going on. There was some changes about, this moving into third dimension, fourth dimension, going from 2D, inverted 3D to 3D, organic 3D and organic 5D. There's a big misconception, and this is one of the things that they've been sharing, is the fact that, a lot of people are hung up, or the people that are starting to awaken or become more aware, they're hung up on this 5D thing, right? And going into 5D, which is great. It's a beautiful experience to get in there. But a lot of the souls and a lot of the humans are not ready for that. And, and going into 5D is a stretch and may not be ready by the time that there is some form of cutoff. So in essence, as I think I've mentioned in some other shows before, is that, the opening has been created so that, we have the choices of going from 2D, inverted 3D to either 3D, organic 3D, or organic 5D as the option. Now, the souls that are not ready, they're going to go into organic 3D, which is already a huge comparison and difference from the 2D and inverted 3D because things are not so much backwards. So in essence, there's that has been opened up. So not even though that was opened up before, now it made it more crystal clear that in essence, that opening that has been created in a way is to give the souls and humans an opportunity to get into organic 3D, which is already a huge step, and then be able to move into organic 5D, which is basically a shifting into a parallel world, which will occur once you've actually gotten to the point of saturation. So not to put so much pressure, because the majority of people that are actually ready for 5D are not that high of a number, right? So it's still in the low 20%, or I think it's, what was it last time? It was about 28%. So it's around 28% that are ready for that. But in essence, some of them have been waffling too. So in essence, they're saying, okay, I'm choosing 3 for the time being because I don't want to lose track of everything else. So one of the other things that was just fairly new was the big concern of, as the split continues. And when I say split, it's just basically you're playing in one field or another, and you're basically seeing a crossover from one to the other.
Yeah.
And it's really just accessing consciousness and be able to create your reality accordingly. Was the whole concern like, okay, if I go to 5D, all the 3D people are going to disappear all of a sudden, and then vice versa. I go into 3D, all the 5D are going to disappear, and then all the 2Ds. So a lot of adjustments has been done around that. So in actual fact, they won't, and they will still be there. You just see another version of them until, and that may take a while, it could be a year or two or more, where they start fading away in a sense, because they're no longer a required projection for your part, because that was one of the concerns with people. Because some of the people were saying, well, I don't want to do one or the other because, I have family in some and family are going to be in the other. So in actual fact, you're able to do a carryover, but the consciousness that are being played with on both realms, or what we call both parallel worlds, are being stable for either going into 5 or going into 3. And even that, it's also the other thing that was also mentioned is that even the 3D so-called planet that was set up is only there right now as it stands now. That can change, but from what I've been informed that it's only there for 15 years.
Yeah.
By 2035. After 2035, basically the merging will occur so that everybody has to go into 5D or not be informed in a sense. So that doesn't mean you have to wait 15 years to do that. You can move anytime along the way. It won't happen for the first few years, I've been told, to give you the opportunity to stabilize the 5 and stabilize the 3.
Yeah.
And then that more transitioning. So that makes it a little easier, because some of the souls have been saying, well, I want to go into 5D, which is what I'd like to play, and but I'm not ready for it, and I still want to play with some of the 3D, but they want to play in the organic 3D, which is different than the inverted 3D and the 2D. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the part that has been altered recently. Which makes it easier, because when I looked at the different ways, and when they did the test runs, what we call simulations, it seemed a lot more palatable for people, and also more comfortable to be able to do that, because in essence, if you actually did a split and all of a sudden like 72% of all the population is gone, and then vice versa, where you're losing 28 or more at that point in time, which was originally when the cutoff was done, is okay, that's the way it's going to be, but they've upgraded that accordingly. So in essence, it's been very beneficial. So those are some of the back end stuff that has been done to make the transition easier.
Yeah.
So there have been, the other thing is there have been a lot of souls that have actually been checking out.
Yeah.
And there have been a lot of souls that have been swapping. So in essence, if a physicality is useful and can host an organic 3D and an organic 5D soul to be able to go into that, then there is a soul will leave and another one will drop in and take its place. But if there is no viability for it, then the the ones that are not choosing to go forward, they will leave, and the fiscality can drop too. Now, I would like to explain how it all goes, but it gets complicated, so I won't, because it's still in the process of being finalized. But in essence, I'll give you tidbits of it. But in essence, it wanted to. They're working with us in a sense where we want to make sure that people are not taken back, and also whatever's still active in them are not going to knock them off their direction because of the fact of all the intense changes. Because there's an integration, but there's also a stabilizing of oneself in a new playground sort of thing. So that's why the bleed over, what looks like a bleed over, is in place. And I thought that was pretty ingenious when I first saw it just recently. This is all fairly new information. It's not something that has been around for a long time. I know some of the things were, but these are some of the latest upgrades to facilitate.
So there seems to be the energy of change seems to be really loud, and you might have just touched on this a little bit already. Do you know what that's about? There seems to be a really obvious level up of change, or changes in the air, a shift or elevation of immense proportions that either has just occurred or is occurring or about to occur. Does that resonate with you, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and there's huge change that's been happening, and all in different increments. But we have some bigger ones coming in, going into the end of August, going into September, about the middle of September, and then we have some other major changes. But what's happening is there's a lot of simulation, a lot of stimulation with people to kind of get ready and to be more fluid with moving through change, rather than going into fear or locking up or going into fight or flight modality, which is kind of, deeply programmed for most people anyways. So yes, we're changing, and then our world changes. So in essence, the changes that we're feeling is our consciousness is expanding, and the probabilities that we are able to access is also expanding. But it's also giving us an opportunity to be able to kind of be more in a playful state as we go through all of these transition, and to kind of get to a point of realization that we've asked for this for so long, even though the ego mind has said, no, we're not ready for this, but we've asked. So there's a lot of changes going on. Now, the systems, what we call systems, governmental, educational, legal systems, all the medical and so forth, are really on the background or the back end of it. There's a lot of destabilizing, but it's also being modified in a way where it will not have the same power it has had up to this point in time. Even the effect by the media, the effect by any form of propaganda is becoming less and less powerful in swaying people's decision and swaying their thought forms and so forth. Because even the fact of fear, if you notice, the fear that people may have is actually less intense.
Yes. Yeah. Both of those things resonate. Also, the less power that the institutions have, that the structures of the matrix have, don't seem to have the power that they had before, which I guess translates into the same thing. People are less fearful about it. Yeah.
Well, they're less fearful. They're less relying on it is another one. They're not relying on that being, a system to be the end all. They're more starting to connect with themselves and using their own inner guidance to see if things resonate, to actually question now. Because I've noticed that even people that never questioned anything, say the medical system and so forth, now are starting to ask questions. Maybe there's something else I should look in. Maybe I should look at alternative. Maybe I should look at this or that, which was not really the case. Because I've even seen it in my own family dynamics just recently, because we had a little gathering because my daughter is having a baby soon. So in essence, when we had another gathering and so forth, I also noticed some of my nephew, nieces, and even my siblings that are very close-minded in many ways, are all of a sudden started saying certain things about, yeah, you know, the alternatives and this and that and whatever. That's a small example, but that's huge compared to when they wouldn't even entertain it and they thought you were totally insane to even bring it up, you know, because the medical system was the answer to everything, what we call the standard medical system. So I'm just giving you an example there because in fact that you notice that they're putting less power into what they're being told, less power into the systems, and saying, well, you know, maybe I need to take steps on my own hand. I should take things in my own hands instead of just relying on what I get told.
Yeah, that resonates too. Now you said that so the entire inverted 3D will be gone, erased, removed by November, right?
Yeah.
November, December.
Yeah, going November, December. That's they're still staying with that, and that's what they have said. And the reason that takes, now you have to understand, once that's removed, okay, there's not that constant transmission from that source. There. However, then we have to go through the process of our own operating system because our artificial intelligence, what we call the ego, is still well programmed. Now, even though that's starting to falter, because you'll notice that people are not so much trying to figure things out by what they think and what their patterns or emotions are bringing up. They're starting to feel more of a connection with themselves. And with that, they're using, and that's part of the process that goes on, because then it shifts. You start shifting away from the dialogue that we may have had and the conditioning that we've had, the critic that we've had, because you notice the critic, you know, and in essence, because look at it this way, people get intuitive messages and so forth, or understandings, which comes either from their human entity or comes from their soul or their higher self, or they actually get other beings that are working with them and so forth, or their guides or whatever. But, you know, that's very clear. It comes in very natural. It's non-emotionally driven in any way. So you get that knowing, you get that intuitiveness, and then you get the dialogue. Almost instantaneously. And it's like, what about this? What about that? We shouldn't do this. Well, remember what happened here, what happened there, and so forth, you know? So people are starting to notice that more and more and starting to shift on that. But in essence, what I'm saying, even in the inverted matrix, is the inverted matrix is still in the operating system, which we call the ego. And that starts to actually get no more support. So it starts to tune itself down as we go along. Plus, our operating system of the energies of the planet itself, even in the organic 3D, it won't exist. So it's not like, okay, it stays there and it doesn't stay in 5D. Now, the only difference in 5D and 3D, it's not so much, we can't relate it to what we're experiencing right now on the planet. What we have to understand is that in organic 3D and organic 5D, the only difference between the two is the level of consciousness and self-awareness that is applied in your creation and your experience. That's all it is. It's not so much that one's better than the other. Okay. It's just two playing fields. One field is still wants to relate a little bit more to the physicality and less to the beingness state, and the other one has more beingness state and a little bit less of the human state operating system. So in essence, it does not, you know, make that big of a difference in a sense when it comes to your experience. Because a lot of people, and I'm sure you know, you realize this, Todd, a lot of people, when we're going through it, they basically want to say, okay, I want to leave the 3D and I want to go into 5D, because they're relating it to what we're experiencing, which is really 2D and inverted 3D. And yes, everything works backwards. Yes, everything is intense. Yes, everything is dramatic. Everything, you know, is controlled and so forth. But that's just because we're relating it to that. When you're actually relating it to an organic 3D too, just for example, that's already a huge shift in that respect. So in essence, it's not working the same way. So it's not about, I got to get there to get out. It's just we're moving along. Everybody's moving along, and you're just going into where you're more prepared to go into. but it's just a level of consciousness and what vibration you'll be working in, and that's it. It's not one's better than the other. You know, I'm gonna talk about that in the retreat too, but in essence, is like 5D is not the end place to be.
Yeah, I got you.
It's wherever you need to be.
Yeah, one's got more focus on the physicality than the other, and that makes sense. It's just what game do you want to play? We got a couple of questions popping up. One from TL, she says, for this phase until November, I don't, yeah, I guess she's talking about until the inverted matrix is removed. What is your number one coping tool? What do you suggest is the number one way to stay grounded or cope?
Yeah, okay. The first thing I can say, don't cope. Okay. Don't try to tolerate or anything of that nature. Accept it. Accept what's there as the playground. Accept whatever's coming up for you, whatever is going on. By accepting it, and you know, basically acknowledging that it's existing, and not to fight it, but to welcome it, and then share love with it, in a sense of being in a state of your own love, and in essence allow it to move through. So basically that's what's going to happen, because things are moving through us right now. And even the stuff that we're clearing, you know, you know, we're not only clearing our operating system, we are clearing some of the linear stuff, we're clearing some stuff that we've carried over from past lives, and also from the human entities' past lives and our own past lives, but we're also taking on stuff from the collective. But that's not for everybody. It's whoever feels at some point that they like to maintain that agreement, because in most cases there has to be an agreement that was there from before. But it's really not about tolerating, is to ride the wave. Okay, so it's like this: you're going to go with your surfboard into the ocean and you got some huge waves. What are you going to do? You either try to tolerate that the waves are knocking you over and over, or you're going to get on that board and you're going to ride that wave. And this is the thing: it's the point of riding it and not fighting it. Okay. Yeah. Flowing with it, accepting it, and seeing for what it is, and then move through it through a transitional aspect that you will do, or transmuting part of it by riding the wave, by going with it in flow, right? Yeah. So if you see yourself being knocked down, you get yourself back up in a sense and say, okay, I'm going back and riding the wave because I'm going to ride this wave. I don't need to be knocked down. And if you do, it's not a bad thing either, because you're getting knocked down. For what reason? What does a surfer do when he gets knocked down? He actually finds a way, or he or she finds a way to fine-tune the craft of riding that wave and riding the board so that he can become more skillful. It's the same thing with us. Every time we get knocked down, we just basically refine the way you're dealing with it and looking at it and say, okay, how can I make use of this? Because that's what it is. It's to make use of everything that's coming through, because it's not there by accident. And it's not there because the inverted matrix is pushing it out yet, even though that's true. But in essence, this is all part of the ride. So in essence, say, okay, how do I use this? So the last thing is not, you know, the last thing you want to do is cope with it. It's just utilize it. Like the wave. Okay, either I'm going to try to stand my ground and not get knocked down, or I'm going to ride it. And this is what we do right now. So anything that comes up, as the energies come up through, as you are being, you know, triggered and stuff comes up for you and old patterns come up for you, use that as saying, okay, I need to look at what I have going on here, how that serves me, and how do I move through it?
Yeah.
And you're not judging what you're experiencing. You're not judging your experience. You're not judging your being knocked down or anything of that nature. You're going to say, oh, okay, great. I see more stability is required in this area. Now, the word that you said about the grounding, yes, there's two ways of grounding. You can ground with the planet, and that is supportive. But as you go along, you want to ground with yourself. You want to ground with your source essence. Okay. So at that point, you can always say, you know, I call in my home frequency, I call in my own higher state, and be with that higher state. Because even when there's a disruption or a movement within what we call the planet, or grounding with the planet, you will not, you won't be affected if you as much or at all in essence if you're grounding to yourself. Now, at first, it's best to ground with Gaia, or what we can call the planet itself, if you're new to all of this. But then eventually, as you're getting more skilled with this, you start tuning into more of yourself and you ground with yourself. with the grounding yourself and the grounding even with Gaia, it basically provides you to maintain a certain level of stability so that you are still accessing a higher level of consciousness. Because what happens is, Todd, when somebody gets hit by something, guess what? Their higher self gets almost pushed aside in essence, and we go into this panic of this program of whatever has been conditioned. And a lot of it is inverted matrix. A lot of it is, fight or flight, feeling that something is bad. The other thing is to understand that nothing is bad, okay? It doesn't matter what it looks like and how it is. Yeah. We have to look at it. It's an opportunity. It's an experience. It's something there for us. And you can't screw it up. You can, avoid looking at it and so forth. But at the same time, you say, okay, this is a beautiful ride. Whatever's occurring right now, what do I need to see? What is going to serve me? How do I utilize this and to move to my next level? Because it's always about bringing you to the next level.
Right.
Okay. Right now, the intensities are one after the other because we're getting a lot of powerful waves and a lot of changes. Now, our operating system, which is governed mainly by the artificial intelligence, does not like change. Our higher self, our soul and the human entity loves change. Okay, there's a difference. So because change opens up opportunities to play even grander and to access higher points of playfulness and experiencing, where the artificial intelligence, what we call the ego at this point in time, does not like change. And that's why when we feel a fear or feel a restriction around change, it's because the ego mind is reacting. You say, no, it's dangerous to change. We cannot go down there. I have no record of what it's going to look like. I only have access to the past. I have access to what everybody else is sharing, but you're going into uncharted territories, and I do not want you to go into this uncharted territory. So I'm going to stimulate emotions. I'm going to stimulate fear. I'm going to stimulate ways to feel unsteady and unstable and to feel that you need to shut down or hibernate, type of thing.
Yeah. And okay, and so we're in going back to the November, or even into the organic 3D, organic 5D, understanding that the program, the egoic, the inverted 3D program, conditioning, all that will not be fed anymore. So all of that's going to go away one way or another. And we have a hand in that. It sounds like we have a hand in that by maintaining our balance and grounding and so on. Is there going to be, and I guess there's always a mystery. We don't really know anything, but I mean, with what you know, is there going to be, is it going to affect our physicality? Will we have the potential and the opportunity and the reality of, going back to our youth or healing ourselves instantaneously and collectively, for lack of a better word, defy death?
Well, absolutely. When we went into the end of 2012, going into 2013, we had activated the initial operating system within ourselves, the actual code, so that the body would actually be able to maintain youthfulness, vibrancy, and health for 1,000 years. Okay. Now, that's been activated, but we are not using it. So when we're going into the organic 3D and the organic 5D, the need for polarity, the need for sickness, the need for having aging, and the need to deteriorate is no longer used as part of its experience. So in essence, your aging process, if chosen, can slow down and stop and also start reversing. Yeah. As for health, again, because we're going into higher energy states and the body's actually changing and it's activating more of its innate operating system, which is not having what you can call disease or having malfunction, it will be able to regenerate any part that is not functional or not functioning well. To the point, at some point along the way, you can actually regrow any organs that you may have removed. Okay, yeah. So that is all being reactivated. How quickly will we be able to utilize it will depend on the progress that we make. It's not going to be collective. meaning that not everybody at once, even though everyone will have the capacity, but it depends on what state they're in and how much work they're still doing on themselves to get out of that older pattern, because then we'll have to actually devolve, or what we call get rid of a lot of the operating system that we need to age, that numbers on your years that you're here actually represents a specific look, a specific deterioration, a shutting down, slowing down, and so forth, which is just basically at that point in time will only remain in the operating system of the mind and the programming, which again, we will not be able to maintain going further. The one of the reasons that the short lifespan was plugged in, because it wasn't our original design, Todd. The original design, when we had our bodies, this particular series, this generation put into place 15,000 years ago, the body was designed to operate for 1,000 years on average. Okay.
Yeah.
And that did not change until the inverted matrix got put in, and then a lot of the operating system came in, and then even our own natural operating system changed. So that is being reversed so that we actually go back to that more natural operating system where we're not even going to require to eat and so forth the same way we had to before. In essence, we can use it as a sensorial experience, but we're not relying into it any longer. Because one of the things we find is that the eating process, specifically the eating process that we've established, is actually promotes deterioration, promotes degeneration, it promotes aging, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Now, because the flow of energy that we used to get, which we are starting to reactivate, the flow of energy we used to get was mostly cut off. And then the reliance was on the food.
Yeah.
Okay. So because we've established a more sensorial experience food chain and no regard to the frequency it carries and how it actually boosts and harnesses the energies of your body and how it allows it to become more powerful in its operating system, that the food itself has actually been designed, and what we've been adopted to is actually to speed down deterioration and also to speed down, speed up, I guess I shouldn't say down, speed up the aging and deterioration and the bringing the body to a state that is no longer with vibrancy or functionality at some point or another. Now, because our bodies are just light energy, okay, what we're doing is now, right now, a lot of changes are going within our physicality too, because we all carry a much more fuller spectrum of light, which some people call going into a more crystalline body and less of a carbon body. A carbon body has a restriction through how much energy and light that it will carry versus a crystal, because a crystal, as you know, crystals actually pick up energy very quickly and emits energy very quickly also. So you can tune it to become a tool. So the body becomes tuned to become a tool, in a sense, to support you on your journey. Now, the one thing is, the other thing that will happen is that the physicality's embodiment, as we go along, again, this is further in the future, I guess if you want to call it that, because all of this is all mapped out. I mean, is it going to change, modify? Yes, of course, it's always changing and modifying and upgrading. But at this point in time is that the physicalities will become more stable and will be able to last longer. And the ones that are even deteriorate will improve and be able to function. But it also gives the freedom for souls to drop in and drop out much more easily. So in essence, you can have souls exchanging, and I hear that there's a possibility of human entity exchanges too. That's been very rare and hasn't really happened. But
what does that mean? I understand the soul exchanging, but how would the human entity exchange work?
Okay, well, a human entity is actually the operating system, and it's actually it's almost like a soul, but it's a soul that is actually earthbound. Okay. And it basically has all of its experiences and skills, and the connection that it has is all to the human experience, the human body, the human planet, we call it the planet because the human entity is connected to the planet, it's connected to the human, what do you call it, the animal kingdoms and all the other different kingdoms that we have, but is also very related to the human experience. Yeah. So I think we've talked about it, I'm not sure at this point, about the fact that, you know, a human entity may keep a lot of the characteristics from one life to the other. So if somebody's very gifted musically, they may take it into another life. So in essence, depending on where they are on the planet, if a specifically highly skilled role that needs to be played, what can be, instead of having that person move there because they've already got a powerful connection to that cluster, is another human entity will come in with those particular skills sets coming in and would be able to take over from that. And the same thing with the souls, because souls will come in from, you know, souls come from everywhere because in essence they come from other planets, they come from non-form, they come from source directly in cases. So in essence, it just gives that much more variety. So let's put it this way. We will not experience the same stagnation and the same pattern of life that we have had for the last 10,000 years. Yeah. It's going to be so much fluid, so much more fluid going in from the movements that will occur. So in essence, your reality will be more actively, constantly updating, creating, and shifting, and so forth, right? And that's before you even take in consideration all the other aspects of self, which is basically other aspects of ourselves that we co-create with and play various roles. So yeah, there's a lot of amazing changes that are about, and we are in the changes. So we've been started this for some time, but it has been speeding up more and more and more. And again, 2019 is a very powerful year in the sense of preparation for us to step into, you know, going into 2020 and so forth and so forth from there.
So it sounds like with this 40% removal of the inverted 3D, that was reflected everywhere, but reflected in the institutions, the structure of the matrix, financial, governmental, and all that stuff that you were talking about. It sounds like that once we get past November, and I can see that everything has a consciousness per se, but that it's not going to be, it's going to be evaporating pretty quickly as well.
Well, yeah, it will be quicker because in essence, that support is no longer there. And that's the thing, it's the support that changes, because it's like this. If you have your own computer and you're trying to program your computer, or you're trying to do work on your computer, but you're connected online, but you're always constantly getting stream of messages and stuff that's all inverted or backwards in a sense, a steady flow of that coming in, it gets a little harder for you to do the work that you want to do on the computer because you're always dealing with all these inputs. Yeah. So in essence, when you remove that, you're not online anymore for that steady information. Now you go back online with the organic, what we can call the organic matrix, the original matrix, right? The matrix that was designed specifically for this playground and these physicalities, because the one that we have, the inverted one, is not specifically done that. It was adopted and utilized to be able to give us a bit of a colorful experience and ride. And this has been amazing in many ways, because look at it this way. Why are we here? Yeah. We're here, you know, many of us are here because they want to come and play in this playground because it's quite unique in many ways. And it actually has that backward experience and the more challenging experience. So, but then of course, there's other souls that have taken on human bodies that have come specifically to be part of the changes that are going on to stimulate the changes that we all have agreed to experience in this stream of life, right? So that's kind of what's really happening in all of that put together when you really look at it. Yeah. So there's a lot of support, you know, going through, and it's going to still feel chaotic, because what's going to happen is that as things change around us, you're going to notice people are going to change further. The way that you interacted with them, maybe the way they even communicate with you and so forth, that's going to continue to shift. You're going to find there's a little bit more unstableness with a lot of the systems. So that may look like, oh, everything's falling apart. But that falling apart or that destabilizing is actually a good thing, because in essence, it allows us to actually look at it and create and put something together that is different and more supportive to the way we're going, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, like even take the monetary system. The monetary system is not going to disappear right away, because we've still created. But then the thing is, the importance of it, how we utilize it, how it drives everything will shift. But along the way, going into 2030 or 2035, it will become totally obsolete, and it won't even be an exchange or anything of that nature. This is the way it's heading now. I'm just saying, but it can be much sooner than that. It can be a little longer. So far, I've been told it won't be longer than that. It'll be actually sooner. So the whole idea of playing with money and whatever else, and how it actually governs our life, because look at it, how much of our time is focused on, making a living, or whatever you want to call it, which is insane when you really look at it. Making a living, like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Because
that's a programmable phrase right there.
yeah, yes, I got to make a living. And in fact, you're already living. You're just playing with this game that you need to make, money to be able to survive, or whatever it is. But, the thing is, this is the thing I brought up years ago to people. You say, well, we need to be productive. We all have to contribute. And then my question is to them, okay, let's take a look at this for a moment. Look at the jobs that are out there, the business, the careers, the jobs, all of the different things that we call contributing to the collective or to the world. How much of it is really a contribution and not an illusionary make work project to keep you enslaved?
Yeah.
How much of it is actually of service to advance humanity?
Very, very good point.
Minimal. It's so small. It doesn't even come close to 10%. It's less than half, if not less. So in essence, that realization will come into play. And with that realization, we're going to look at, okay, these things are not required any longer. Because look at a lot of the systems that are in place right now. It's been obsolete so long ago, but in essence, it's held there because people have given power to it. Because in essence, if that does not exist, I will not have a job. And a lot of people won't have a job, because we have under the mentality that we have to have commerce. We have to have an economy to be able to flourish, which is insane. Because tell you, Todd, on other planets that I've been on, that I have full recollection of, and even the ones I've done not that long ago, that concept doesn't even exist. It's like insane to even bring it up as an idea. It's like, what? What the heck is that? But I'm not judging it, because it has played a role for sure, in the sense of giving us a certain experience. But have we outgrown it? Pretty much so. Look at the younger people, and even the people that are becoming more aware. What happens is their focus is to be of service. Their focus is how to make the world better. The focus is how to elevate each other. The focus is actually creating a new playground, a new reality, accessing higher consciousness. It's not about how can I make more money, how can I, rule, and how can I be dominated by it, or how can I do this? No. And this is one of the things why people don't want to get into jobs and so forth, because they got to a point of consciousness. It's like, no, I see that as a trap. I don't want to do that. But yes, the system still applies in the sense where, we still have to have money and so forth. But at the same time, it doesn't even make sense. And this is what people are noticing. I'm not saying everybody, a lot of people are not, but there are much more people this doesn't make sense. This game does not make sense, because they're becoming more aware of the truth. And the truth is, we don't need to play with this any longer. It was great. It was a blast. We had fun with it, but it's reducing, and it's actually limiting what we can do.
Yeah, it starts to hurt the soul. Can't go against that. Now, you were saying let me see how you put this. So you've got the human aspect, which you described, which is quote unquote almost the soul. Then you've got the soul. And then you've got the oversoul and a lot of stuff in between. You've got multidimensional aspects. who, at this point, with everything that's changing, the expansion of the collective awareness, the individual awareness, who's running the show here? In our own essence, is this a all of us, all of me, and where is that human in all this?
Okay, it's a good question, actually. What's happening is there's a merging going on. It's basically the soul wanting to work more with the human entity, to work more with the body consciousness, more with the overall consciousness, and to work together, but also to work with other beings and so forth, but also to work with our, what you call the oversouls and soul families and so forth. Now, the driver's seat was taken over back in around the end of 2012, 2013 for this, what we call the superconscious, which is basically the soul. It's actually gone into the driver's seat more often, even though it's wrestling with, you know, the ego programming and so forth at times. And when I say wrestling, is because it's trying to jump into the driver's seat a lot of times. But in essence, so that's in the forefront of driving, because the purpose is to evolve and to, you know, access more consciousness, so we start upgrading our experience. So the human entity, which is the human part, wants to evolve, wants to actually experience the human experience in an upgraded fashion. The human entity learns from the various souls and what it can do together, okay? Because the human entity is earthbound. So in essence, it's that part of consciousness that learns from each other and through its experiences. It's the souls that are coming in that are bringing interdimensional states of consciousness into play, into the human experience, which the human entity is taking on. It is also modifying the way that the overall consciousness is being processing, but also the body itself actually takes a lot of this input that the soul, because every soul that comes in holds a certain frequency, which accelerates the changes that are occurring physically, mentally, but it's also in the human entity. Now, the human entity, as it achieves those levels of higher consciousness and also those higher frequency, it's actually streaming back to the collective human entity, and it starts to affect all the other human entities that are in other people's bodies, right?
Yeah.
So all of that is working. So the driver's seat is our higher selves. Now, we are having more input. We're having more assistance by our oversouls and also by what we call our soul family, including our twin soul. There's much more input and much more open sharing that is occurring. This is one of the reasons that started some time ago, but it's actually accelerating now. And that's why the calcification of the pineal gland and so forth, because your third eye has kind of, a lot of it has been blocked out in a sense where it can't tune into it. Now, the third eye actually gives you access to other levels of consciousness, but when we're talking about other souls on other dimensions, other souls that are on other planets, souls that are non-form, and it gives you access to that. Your own soul has access to its oversoul, has access to all the soul family, and has access to, you know, other resources in that regards. And then, of course, we're always streaming higher consciousness from source itself. So that has taken the forerun of everything. Like even us, with all the changes that are going on, it's basically a lot of the souls that have said, okay, we're ready, let's do what we need to do, and let's work together on this. Of course, it has elicited some assistance from other beings, which are other brother souls, sister souls of us. There are other aspects of us that are not in the human body, having the human game, but has an understanding of it, and is also like stepping back and saying, okay, how can we look at the beautiful screen here? What can we suggest and do? And then it could see the little potholes or the big potholes and say, okay, let's modify that so that, you know, not everybody keeps falling into those big potholes. Let's smoothen that out. Let's remove some of these traps that have been set there to keep us in that state and so forth. So in essence, like even now, I don't know if you've seen it, this new update program has been coming in, and it's, I've been working on it for a while, but then now it's being transmitted. The fact of this fear that what happens if there's a market crash, or if the monetary system goes down, or something of that nature. Well, that creates a lot of fear and a lot of holding on to the status quo the way it is. But now there's been streaming from a higher perspective and encoding within us that really that's not the end all in any way, shape, or form. In fact, we come to the realization, and many people are realizing, is that the money is fictional. It comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
We can duplicate any of it at any time, and no one has control over it. We can just do whatever we need to do with it if we're still playing with it, and then make it obsolete anyways at any point in time. So the fear, the intensity of that fear has been calmed, or it's at least being streamed as calm. So people are not reacting as much. Even when you don't have the money, it's like, okay, well, don't have the money, right? We'll figure out, something will work out, whatever it is. We're not going to go into panic as much. Some people still do, and we all do to some degree, but in essence, you'll notice it's not as intense, and it's not as often, and you have a whole different new set point. Where before, like if you're getting just close, you start panicking. Now you can be right at minus, and it's like, okay, we don't know if we're going to make the rent this month or whatever it is, and you're still calm. It's like, okay, we're still going to do what we need to do, but you're not reacting as much as before. So you notice that that's been streaming, so that some of these changes, it's not that we need to have, a lot of people are saying, well, we have to become the free man, do this, or, create a gold-backed monetary system and all that. Those are just games that they're all playing. It's still the same thing, because in essence, even if you go back and you say, okay, now we can control the money system, but what's gold? Gold is just another metal, like any other metal, and we've
cryptocurrency.
We put a value to it or whatever it is, but in essence, everything is valued the same. Everything has a purpose, right?
Right.
Because in essence, I think somebody had said that a long time ago, and says, well, if you're in the desert right now, what's more important, a brick of gold or a gallon of water? Something has more power and more value at that point in time, depending what you need. That's where the value is. It's not really because this is a precious metal or not, or the fact there's a lack of it or anything of that nature, because that's all set up. So in essence, that's been encoding so that in fact, it would be a little easier for us to see the alternative. And that is, we do not need to give power to all of this, and we do not need to be controlled by all of this any longer.
Wow, that's a lot of info, man. But it resonates, and even like that thing you said about the end of the month thing, it resonates, because I'm living it right now, and I can't be unique. I mean, that's being streamed, like you said. It's got to be.
Yeah, because there's a lot more people that are in that position, and especially if you have to understand, as we make a shift in our way of looking at life and how we do things, we also are shifting in the sense of, what can I say, the importance and what you will do and not do for, say, called money and so forth. So, you're going to do something else, and you don't want to give power to it. But in essence, if you're going to be in fear state, then that's going to still drive you. So you're going to go back into pushing yourself into that whole state that I need to go and make money or whatever it is. It's like you deciding at this point in time, so, well, I can't make the rent, I'm going to go get a job. I'll see you. I'm going to, some fast food place or whatever, to get a job, and we'll put all the shows on hold until I have enough money to pay the rent. No, you're going to keep going, and people are going to support you, do whatever it needs to be done, because in essence, that's the way it's going to work. That's the way you shift it too.
Yeah, I agree with that. I can see that. Yeah. What else were you? Oh, I wanted to ask you. Maybe this is it's curiosity. So you have mentioned more than once before about having a lot of recall, or even full recall, of other planetary experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. To me, and I don't have that depth of recall, not even close. I've got some memories, obviously, and but my point is, this certainly feels like a very special experience. How does, maybe this is not even a real question above this realm, how does Earth planet experience look in comparison to other recollections you have of other planetary experiences?
Well, I'm going to answer something first, and then I'll go into that. One of the questions I've been asked before, and I bring it up now, is that how come we don't all remember, right? And or have that access. The thing is, it can be a distraction and it can be confusing, especially if we're trying to really integrate and work in the human experience. You have to be so neutral and so grounded when you have a remembrance of a planet that has almost no challenges in comparison to what we have here. Okay. Yeah. And to the point where you're saying, this is insane, and you don't even want to be here. You know, you've heard of people saying, well, you know, I want to go home. I want to be leaving here, because they have a bit of that memory still there of like, this is no playground that I'm having any fun in, or whatever it is, right? So I just wanted to put that in context at that point in time. So most of us at this point in time have memories, but we're not accessing it only because don't want to add more to the confusion until you're more grounded with yourself, and then you can use it. And other people do have access to that and can relate it and bring some of that experience into this earth plane, because they've already, you know, are prepared more for it for themselves. Now, when I look at the comparison of another planet to here, I've been on many planets. My soul, okay, most of them, because there are 84 combined souls, are not from this planet at all. I've never even had an experience on this planet. There's only a small amount of them have had some. So that helps too, in essence. But when we look at it, the comparison to planet Earth, a lot of the planets out there do not have any form of polarity, do not have everything pushing you from devolving. It does not have the same getting lost in the physicality, getting lost in the artificial intelligence, getting lost in the fact of destroying one another, in the fact that, you know, we do everything possible to take each other down, and to kind of lose the degree of even knowing who you are, besides this ego, or what we call automatic default program physicality that has no access to it. So in very essence, it's hugely different in that capacity. Yeah. The other thing is that, you know, some of the beings that have looked on planet Earth, they're amazed that we can play this game. In fact, some of them are totally entertained by it, in a sense, by looking at how we can still be playing the game how we play right now. Yeah. In the sense of, you know, still promoting war, still promoting separation, and so forth. When I compare to other planets, they actually work in as groups to promote each other, to assist each other, to create an expanded way of creating. There is no lack. There is no needing to earn anything. Each and every soul that drops into a physicality on a planet pretty well basically has access to everything. Yeah. And that access is there because, in essence, nobody owns anything. Yeah. There is no control over anybody or anything of that nature. There are elders that, and when we call elders, not elders that we call here, you know, aged and decrepit, we're talking elders that have had many lives, that are experienced and will kind of make sure that certain things stay on track. It's not in the same way as we have the systems here. They're actually teachers. They're example leaders more than anything else. They make sure that there's equality, balance, and harmony, and so forth in that regards. But in essence, it's mainly hands-off type of thing. The stuff that we experience in our physicality, deterioration, and so forth, is not experienced in most of the planets that I've seen and been on and have recollection on. The fact of, you know, giving birth and all that stuff, going through very intense, 9 months, and then the birthing process, and then the control of, you know, having this child in your life until, you know, one of you exits and stuff like that, doesn't exist, you know. And in essence, everything is raised by communities, but even the birthing process is very natural, and it's a lot quicker. In the planet Ceres, it's like a 3-day process. Not a 9 months, 3-day process. And, you know, it's very simple. The power given to what it represents or anything of that nature is quite different also. It can be, in comparison to here, a little bit more boring when it comes to the level of stuff we experience here, and especially emotions, because most of the physicalities do not have anywhere near the capacity to experience emotions as here. We can be ruled totally by emotions, totally run by it. That's unheard of in most places at all. You can feel emotions, but emotions are referred to slightly different. It's more of a holistic physical experience of whatever is going on, but in essence, it's not like something off the top, or actually it controls us, or actually brings our body into a panic or anything of that nature. It's more of a, like, you taste something, for example, I'm just giving an analogy. You taste something with your tongue. Instead of localizing in your tongue, you would feel it throughout your whole body. So your whole body is tasting something. That's how what they relate to emotions, which is not really called that, to them. So every experience is more holistically felt, where ours just kind of goes all over the map type of thing. Yeah. Now, the beauty of planet Earth is that to see from where it is now, or has it even been for the last while, and to see it to evolve is quite an art in a sense, because it is quite unique in going from that level to a higher level that we are going into. The only reason planet Earth is being upgraded at this point in time, and humanity is being upgraded, because we've been stuck in the same position for a long time, and we're just repeating over and over and over and over again. And it's affecting our galaxy, because we're intimately connected with about 400 planets in our quadrant of the galaxy that have a more direct interest in what we do and how we do it, because it affects them. Now, we were quarantined for a very long time, but that ended a while ago, a few years ago, actually, several years ago. I think it was around 2013, 2014. That's when the quarantine was dropped. So we're back online with them in essence. So it's saying, okay, we needed to be online so we can monitor, and be online so that they actually get new streams of information. So a lot of the streaming that we're getting, a lot of the inputs and pulses that we're receiving is because we're back online again. Yeah. And this is why we're experiencing what we're experiencing. And it's all carefully designed so that we don't, overload anybody or anything of that nature. So the amount, and this is why all the pulses that are coming in stages along the way. And each one, and the stages are closer to each other to kind of keep the momentum going, but they are more consistent than they've ever been before.
Yeah. Fascinating. So when's your next event?
Well, we have our retreat that starts this Sunday. Okay, that's our 7-day plus event, because it's Sunday to Sunday, so it's almost 8 days, but we don't start until later in the day on Sunday. So if anybody at the last minute wants to get on, they have 1 day to do so. If you can't attend, then we do provide the video and audio recording of the whole retreat, which will be available within a couple of weeks after the retreat. And so you can experience it online. So there'll be video and audios with all the processing. This will be the most powerful retreat that I've ever done. My soul has made it very clear. It's very powerfully focused to stimulate and to trigger the remembrance and the accessibility of who you are. So it's basically self-discovery, discovering yourself more than this physical experience and anything else that you've experienced now, discovering that part of you that has gone dormant for a lot of people. And even if you have been accessing it, or just bring it to the next level for you and so forth. So that event starts this Sunday. And so we'll be deeply immersed in that. And we have beautiful souls that are coming from all over the world to participate. And if anybody else that wants to participate, then the link, I think, will be on the body somewhere of the postings later. And but if you can't be live, you can get the recordings. You can get the recordings now. You can get the recording even afterwards that we started the retreat and going on, because it'll be available for a little while after that too.
And that's found on a different web page than your web page, right?
What's that? Sorry.
Franco.com.
FrancoDiNicola.com. Yeah, everything is there.
Even it is there. For some reason, I thought it was a different one. Yeah, I'll put that up in the. put that up in the comments. Let's see.
Yeah. So the Eventbrite link that we used the last couple of times, remain active for remain active until the last day, and then after that it will be available.
So here you go.
The events, yes,
So it's under Get Started into Events.
yes.
And this is, yeah, this is, I'm going to put
The 7-day self-discovery retreat. It'll probably be below. You'll have to scroll down to be able to see it at this point.
oh, wait, I got the wrong one. Here we go. Yeah. There you go.
Okay.
7-day self-discovery retreat, live stream workshop. And yeah, okay. So that information will be here even after it occurs.
Yes, yes, yes. So at that point in time, if they're not coming in person, then they can get all the video and audio recordings with all the processes in there. So they will be able to experience it online, basically. We won't be live streaming because live streaming a retreat is very challenging. We used to do it, and we do it for the shorter ones, 2.5 day ones. We do it, but not for 5 and 7 day ones, because it's the thing is, it's difficult to keep. Okay, have you been to retreats yourself, Todd?
Yes.
Okay, people like to connect and have experiences and so forth, and you have people online. Now they don't have the same access as you may have that you're in person. So sometimes you say, okay, let's all meet back at 3 o'clock, and it's 3:30. People are still, a few people starting to show up, and meanwhile the people online say, hey, it's 3 o'clock past now, and we're waiting for you guys, right? Mm-hmm. So it's hard to maintain a consistency of a timetable, because people, when they're there in person, the time is not always as consistent. We maintain it as consistent as possible, but the thing is, people like to have fun and they enjoy whatever else. And so it's very interactive, it's very powerful, and whoever wants to join us, move quickly, or you can get the recordings afterwards.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for bringing this home. The last show of the day, and I feel a big download coming in. I'm gonna have to go lay down. I think it was all the information you just put out.
Yeah. So how's things with you? I guess Morgan was away. Is she back, or is she still away?
No, she didn't leave. No.
Oh, she didn't leave yet. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we got the paperwork turned in at the last second, and we're waiting on an answer.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, because there was some mention that she was going to go back to Australia for a while.
Yeah, but we chose a different timeline. We'll continue to choose different timelines.
Perfect.
Yeah,
and I understand you have TL there also playing with you guys. And
yeah, she's been here for about a week. Yeah.
Cool. Well, say hi to Morgan for me and TL, and yeah, it was great. I look forward to connecting again. I think we connect back in August at some point. I don't remember the date at the moment, but
sounds good. And same to Kimberly.
I will, absolutely.
Appreciate you. Take care,
sure
brother.
She's online watching, so great. Anyways, take care. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you later.
Until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.